Okay, so why don't we kick things off, Andrea, and we'll be able to loop in some of our attendees as they come through. So we are delighted to have Andrea on our show today. So for those of you who are not familiar with our Women Entrepreneur Program, Startup Canada, since our program launched on March 11th of 2020, we have been supporting women entrepreneurs through a series of webinars, offering resources, mentorship, education, tips, and really trying to create a suite of support services that we can offer women entrepreneurs across Canada. So all of our sessions are recorded and packaged on our website for women entrepreneurs to access at any time. So we have them live to ask questions sort of day to day to get some direct feedback from our guests and our subject matter experts. But we will be, sharing all of these insights over the coming months, because these topics I think are incredibly relevant right now and will continue to be very relevant. So I'm delighted to introduce Andrea today. Andrea Lekushoff is going to be sharing some great best practices on communicating during unprecedented times. That is what we're experiencing at the moment. And really focusing on empathy, honesty, and trying to provide some thoughts on different approaches in terms of communications. She's bringing nearly 30 years of experience guiding Canadian companies, both small and large, through moments of crisis and their subsequent recovery that we see so many entrepreneurs really struggling with, how they're communicating and managing things at present, but how can we also sort of prepare for the future when things are unknown. So I think that'll be a great perspective to get from you, Andrea. Andrea has, as I mentioned, been really helping guide companies in diverse industries across Canada. So as we know with our entrepreneur membership, we span every industry across Canada. So getting her perspectives is going to be really great there. And looking at brand and reputation and looking at how you can maintain that brand trust right now, but also rebuild your brand potentially once the crisis is over. So we're really excited to hear your sense of leadership comms, how we can be navigating over the next couple of weeks and months, and welcome any questions from the audience at any time. So welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Kayla, and thanks so much for the invitation to join everyone, and thanks to everyone for joining in. As Kayla mentioned, I'm Andrea Lekushoff. I am the president of Broadreach Communications. We're a national PR agency that helps drive sales for companies of all sizes. And let me start by saying that entrepreneurship and startups are near and dear to my heart. My dad started up a construction firm decades ago and grew it to 100 people. So I watched him do that as I was a little girl. I studied entrepreneurship at the Ivy Business School while I was doing my MBA. I founded Broadreach many years ago. I supported my husband financially when he launched his own startup. And I also was having children and buying a house at the same time while doing so. I'm on the board of Women in Influence, and I've been a judge of the Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards for years, part of the YPO and part of the Tech Canada community. And we've done a lot of work driving visibility for the Deloitte Technology Fast 50 and startups. So all of that to say is I know what it's like to be in your shoes. I have been in your shoes. I have many friends who are in your shoes. So I'm really delighted to be here today. And with all the change that's going on right now during the crisis, communications has never been more important. And I would say that today communications is leadership, especially with everyone working, so many people working from their homes and not being able to see people face to face. Communications truly is leadership. And that goes externally for your company, but also internally. And I'm going to focus today on a number of different internal and external best practices that I can, that hopefully that you can leverage in your own company. And here's what I've been seeing a lot, and I want you to know this before I jump into the best practices, is what varies from company to company today is how those difficult decisions that you're making are being handled and, more importantly, communicated. And when we finally emerge from this pandemic, and I know it's kind of hard to imagine, I still can't imagine it, but I know we will emerge from it. Here's what you'll see. Reputations will have been made and reputations will have been broken during this crisis. And your employees, employees across the country, will have a very, very long memory of how they were treated and how they were communicated to. So I'm predicting that the reputation of your startup and even your personal leadership brand, and actually actually the reputation culture of your company will hinge on how well everyone on your team is being communicated to right now. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So what I want to do is share some of those best practices that I mentioned. And when I'm talking about communicating, I really am not talking about sending out the perfectly manicured email. I'm talking about bringing all of your people along on a journey. And it's a mutual journey because you're going to need to be informed by your team in terms of where your company is actually directed. They might be some of your best sort of navigating tools in terms of how you're going to make it through this crisis. And you need to let them know where things stand and where things are going. And I'm also talking about checking in with your clients, your partners, your employees, and offering to help them professionally and also now personally. And that is a new aspect of leadership where before you'd be really focused on the professional aspect of how Andrea is doing. And now you have to bring in the personal because you're in people's homes. They have animals walking by, they're helping kids with their homework. And now, so the personal, how are you doing personally is so important for leaders today. I'm also talking about, and Kayla mentioned this, honesty, transparency, compassion, and empathy. And these are things that matter really, they matter a lot right now, and they'll determine how your reputation will be sort of within the next few months and frankly within a few years. So here are my 11 best practices that you can leverage both in your internal and external communications during this crisis. I actually had 10 last night, but this morning in going over the presentation, I couldn't resist and I added one more. So here we go. Number one, don't communicate externally if you don't need to. And that sounds a little bit odd coming from a communicator. However, it's really important. In fact, this is a really important one. So many companies are communicating unnecessarily. And I think what you need to do now is just take stock of how you're communicating, take stock of the groups of people that you're communicating to, and take stock of the frequency in which you're communicating. And really understand if all of those are necessary. It's actually kind of funny. There is a video that I saw online of all these big brands communicating around COVID-19, and they all have the same sort of somber piano melody, and they're all saying the same words that we hear in articles and all the time. But you guys are startups, so you have an opportunity to be really different and stand apart from the pack. And don't sort of think that you need to say anything right now. Step back, and if your product or if your service is helping the fight, then communicate it. If you're making adjustments to all your processes, and I'm sure you've looked at that already, communicate that. So for example, Visa and MasterCard, many of you will know that they changed their process so that their tap limit now is, I think, $250 because it makes people feel more secure and safer and have more peace of mind when they're checking out. So if you're doing something like that, or I even read of a furniture delivery company doing contactless delivery, if you're doing something like that, communicate it because your customers and your clients will want to know, and you're actually helping fight the fight. But if you don't have anything that's COVID related to communicate, just don't communicate. And that's okay. A lot of companies and a lot of our clients are like, we need to communicate. What can we communicate? And often we'll just sort of look back at them and say, just don't. If there's nothing that's related to what's going on right now, it's okay to not communicate. Focus on other things that you're doing internally that can help you sort of be ready for once we emerge from all of that. In terms of channels, look at your channels. The ones that you don't need, get rid of. Don't create new channels right now, especially for employees. And you've probably already been through this. Just use the channels that are really that you've noticed a lot of engagement on. And frankly, I think that after the pandemic is over, I really hope, and it's odd to hear a communicator say this, but I really do hope that there are less channels and just more engaging channels that really resonate. In terms of media relations, again, all media, if you look at the Globe, you look at BNN, you look at other media outlets, they're all focused on COVID, even the sports and the entertainment reporters. So there's really no point in going out to them with what you think might be a good news story for your company unless it's COVID related, because they'll look at you and they'll think you're tone deaf, and they'll remember that when this is over as well. So let me pause there. That's the end of don't communicate if you don't need to. Are there any, Kayla, do you have any questions?
Yeah,
Does anyone else
that's
have
such
any
a great
questions?
point. I think really with this information overload that we're seeing right now, everybody feels this sense that they have to be at the forefront of this conversation and
Yep.
taking up space. But then we're seeing this incredibly saturated communications landscape that it's so hard to drill and pierce through all of that noise. So I think it's hard in practice because you see everybody else doing it, so you almost are jumping on that bandwagon. How do you recommend maybe to startups and organizations to get over that, maybe that bold feeling that they feel, but everybody else is doing it, shouldn't we also be communicating everything to all people right now?
Just know that it's not important. In fact, so I'll give you an example, and this is from a few weeks ago. We use the Microsoft platform, and we got an email from Microsoft that it was probably a global launch. So let's give them a little bit of slack in thinking that it might have been hard to sort of stop that global launch, but it was, Microsoft Office is now Microsoft, or like they changed their name, and it was irrelevant to me. We were, I think it was like the first week of all the craziness trying to figure out what we were doing. And so if it's not mission critical for your stakeholders to know something, just don't. Like literally, you're in triage right now. There's the critical operational communications that will keep your operations afloat. There's the nice to do, and then there's the let's do it sometime. Get rid of the let's do it sometime. The nice to do, just keep it in a separate sort of file, but only communicate what's critical to move your business forward and to maintain business continuity right now. That is the only thing that you need to communicate. And obviously, if you're helping fight the fight, we have some clients that are doing great things. They're helping sort of leveraging their global supply chain to bring PPE into the country. Like they've stocked down production and they're doing that. Like that is something worth communicating because they really are contributing to what's going on right now. But just resist the urge, at least for the next few weeks, to communicate anything that's not mission critical. And I bet your stakeholders will appreciate it as well, because we've all seen that we're just inundated with emails that are truly, truly, some of them unnecessary. And you'll be seen as someone who is unnecessarily communicating.
Exactly. And that when you do send out a message, people will perk up and they'll listen. So even that future opportunity.
Versus just delete it or skip over it.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that there were so many tweets and memes going out that, from whatever email address you had provided to, McDonald's, or, you shopped at Banana Republic 12 years ago or something.
12 years ago. So
exactly.
Many people that you had done business with. So all of that, I think, has subsided. I think
Yes.
People have really decided that they're no longer in that phase. So really focus on the reopening of the economy and the sort of reestablishment of your business, and start creating communications for those that you can hold on to and be ready to sort of send out once we're there.
Love that, Andrea. Fantastic. Let's go to tip number 2.
Number 2, communicate transparently with your stakeholders. There's never been a more dire need for open, transparent, and honest communications. By now, you've probably figured out, we just talked about the cadence in which you need to communicate with your key stakeholders to keep your company sort of operating and afloat, and reassuring them. And that's a really important part with stakeholders, reassuring them that you're okay and reassuring them that you're doing everything you possibly can to get through this. If you don't have a regular cadence of communications for important stakeholders, sit back and think what a regular cadence for you would be, and then start doing it. Let them know what's changed for you. Let them know what you're doing, what you're not doing. Tell them what you're putting on hold. And really, it's an exercise in ultimate transparency, especially when you're dealing with investors. And many of you on this call might very well have investors, and many of them can help you. So the more you reach out to them, and I'm making the assumption that you already have, but if you haven't reach out to them and see how they can help you navigate this. Especially if they are experienced, and especially if they've been through cycles like this, they'll definitely have some good advice for you. For customers, ask how you can help. There's probably ways that you can help your customers, even if they're not paying you for it. If you've got time on your hands, help them, because they'll remember that when this is done. And for customers, if your products or services are going to be delayed, let them know as soon as possible so that they can go downstream and let their customers know. That will sort of go a long way to helping build relationships. And again, when you have good news, like this manufacturing firm that I was talking about that's leveraging their global supply chain to bring PPE into the country. Go to your stakeholders, all of them. Communicate differently with each group. Your investors will be one message, your clients will be another one, and it can be a great source of pride, not only for certainly for you, but for your team to be really doing something to help. And everyone is looking for good news these days. So if you can deliver it in a way that's related to what's going on right now, you'll be in a really great position. At the end of number 2. Any questions on that?
Andrea, yeah. So what would be your advice for, many startups are at a really challenging juncture, that they are not sure if they're going to be viable, over the coming days, weeks, months. How do you ensure that you're being transparent, but also not, potentially causing concern or fear from your investors, or, activating severe concern from stakeholders that could be continuing your business? How do you maintain transparency, but also showcase that you're trying your best, but you're not 100% confident you're going to be able to prevail through COVID-19?
I think one thing you can do, and again, many of you have probably done this, is to create various scenarios, and go to your investors with the various scenarios and with the actions that you'll take in each scenario. And scenarios can involve cash flow, they can involve sales, it can involve a bunch of different milestones, but what your investors really need to know is that you are proactive, that you're thinking, that you have your entire team together, that you are leveraging your stakeholders, that you're doing everything that you need to. So, I think that, they're going to ask for transparency. Transparency really is the best policy. And for you to be thinking through what could happen if, and really doing your best to estimate how you best get to truly, not many companies are looking for profitability this year. They're really just looking to, if they're lucky, break even. So, indicate how you are safeguarding their investment. Ask for their help. Like, people want to be engaged. And I think that that's truly a really good way to do that. And you know what, maybe there's even some opportunities you can identify for them to invest in that might be a really good collaborator with your business. So if you're seeing opportunities for them in the marketplace, let them know. If you're seeing opportunities for them to invest potentially in another company that can join yours, there's another win-win opportunity.
That's fantastic advice, Andrea. Fantastic. Tip number 3, let's jump in.
Live your company values. This is one of my favorites. After I wrote this yesterday, I actually printed out my company values and put it on my wall here. We've got it up at the office, but now I can actually look at it on a daily basis. So a company's values are a company's true north. It's how they make decisions. It's how they treat employees. It's how they walk the walk. And sticking to your company values is so critical right now if you have them. Your employees need to see that your actions and communications are consistent with what you've been saying for the months and years previous to now. And as many of you know, those values start at the top. They start with leadership and they cascade down into developing people, into performance evaluations. And if they're constantly reinforced, it can very well become a competitive advantage. And for those companies that don't have a set of company values, what I would say is look to LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a great set of 6 company values. There are there's quite a few videos online that you can look to, and they are truly their true north, and they will say time and time again that that's what one of their competitive advantages are. And they're so good that Oprah has even interviewed LinkedIn CEO on them. So definitely worth a read. I'm going to read you a quote from Tim Cook on how values can impact your reputation. So what he said is, this is the time to truly act on your company's values, your purpose, your mission, to deliver on customers' needs, to align with your brand. Your employees and your customers will want to know what you stand for as a company and how your company is being a good corporate citizen during this pandemic. So if you want to write sort of anything down on this, he included a formula along with this, which is in brackets, purpose plus values close brackets, times behavior plus communications equals your reputation. And that is really, really critical. So I'm just going to repeat that one more time. So in brackets, purpose plus value plus values times behavior plus communications, which is the real critical component, because you might be doing all that internally and not communicating it, and it won't impact your reputation. So I think that's something that when I came across that, I thought that was really, really strong. And that's number 3.
I love that, Andrea. Oh my gosh, so I'm printing company values, putting that on the wall, taking this formula, putting that on the wall. Fantastic. Oh, that's wonderful. Let's go to number 4.
Bring humanity to your communications. This is, I have many favorite best practices here. We just actually recently launched a podcast on called Full Circle, bringing humanity to leadership communications. So this is more critical than ever before. And you know what? I know we have a group of women entrepreneurs on this call, and I think that that is truly a result of so many women in the workforce. Like over the years, if you sort of chronicle sort of like the different sort of values and principles in the workplace, I am so proud of the impact that women are having across the board. And I think this is definitely one of them. So now, as many of you will likely know, it's not the time to be hiding behind your desk or behind your computer. Leaders need to get out and show their humanity and their humility. They need to start being real. And, you know, we've seen that from many leaders, but there's still so many leaders that are just not there yet. And I think that this crisis will really force that out of so many people. And it will be truly a lesson that they've learned. And they need to be willing to have the tough conversations and explain facts to people and their stakeholders. And now, you know, as I mentioned before, it's not time to sort of like massage your message. It's really just time to be radically honest, like to be real and talk from the heart. And again, that's not something that you would have heard even 5 years ago, people saying, you know, talk from the heart, but, you know, let people know how you empathize with them and how you hopefully understand the situation that they're in. And now is also a time to really show genuine gratitude to people's contributions. And I smile when I say this because I really enjoyed Queen Elizabeth's address to the UK a few weeks ago. It's a really great example of this. There was no sugarcoating, there was no advice. It was just genuine thanks and reassurance that they will get through this together. So I would ask you, are you looking to your team and thanking them over and over and over? Are you doing the same with your suppliers? Are you doing the same with other stakeholders? Now is a time to really be grateful for their contributions, because there are so many employees that just tagged out. They're like, can't handle this, I'm out. There's so many employees that have to go into work, or, you know, we work with companies that have people that work in factories and they have to go into work. And, you know, while it's super generous of their owners to sort of pay them more to show up for work, they're putting their lives at risk versus staying at home like I have the luxury of doing, and many of you might. So, you know, to really thank the people for their contribution is important. And are you doing the things that you really should be doing? Do you have any frontline workers? Do you have any people that have to leave their homes to perform their job? And if you do, are you compensating them differently? Are you thanking them on a regular basis? And, you know, are you being real with your people? So imagine the long-term impact if, you know, your team members got off the phone and said, oh my God, my manager was so personal. Or, you know, the town hall we just had virtually, my God, our CEO was incredibly open and real in our conversation today. That will change, like truly change the dynamics of your company and really shift the levels of connection and engagement among the team. And frankly, it's okay if you don't have all the answers. You've probably figured that out by now, because no one really does, and no one's expecting you to. So an honest acknowledgement that you don't know, but you're going to do your best to find out and come back next week with the answer is what people will really respect. And also, don't be afraid to acknowledge how hard things are internally. And, you know, Kayla, you were like, you know, how much do you share? How much do you not share? You know, I have a friend who runs an amazing company, and 3 weeks ago, he laid out all of the different steps that they would do if they hit certain financial milestones. And, you know, some of them involved pay cuts, some of them involved shifting to a 4-day work week. And, you know, he was really wanting to be transparent, and people came back to him afterwards and said, thank you. Like, thank you for being so transparent, because we now know what we can count on and what will happen when our revenues shift or if they don't shift. So if you're having to cut salaries, or if you're having to let more people go, more transparent you can be with where you are right now, where you may be, and what will happen if you hit certain thresholds, the more appreciative they will be. And of course, actions speak louder than words. Certainly companies that have leadership teams that take pay cuts first and take deeper pay cuts will be certainly well respected. I've seen many companies that have their leadership teams who have not taken a pay cut and who have cut other people's pay. So if you're looking for employer loyalty, if you're looking to do the right thing, you'll look to see how your leadership team can be impacted, I would say, more than the rest of your employees, because on the other side of this, they have the most to gain. And that's the end of number 4.
That's great. And so many parts of that, the gratitude piece and saying thank you, that doesn't cost anything. And I think for so many startups and entrepreneurs, that if you have, only 1 or 2 employees and you're really strapped for cash, gratitude is something that we can all afford. So that message, I think, is great. And on that transparency piece, this sort of stage gating and looking at all of the, if this, then that, transparency with stakeholders externally, but then also internally. That's the first time I've actually heard of an example like that of using this sort of model of demonstrating, here's what's at stake, here are the options we're pursuing. We're not there yet, but so that there's no surprises, that, even the surprise of being surprised carries such an emotional load for so many employees.
And you're dealing with people's livelihoods. Kayla, what I'll do is I'll send you, I'm just going to write this down right now. It's Bain, sorry. Bain has a really great model of how to look at that. So that might be something that you want to share with everyone on this call and with your membership, because it's really powerful. And that sort of stage approach was modeled after the Bain approach.
I love that. Let's go to number 5.
Inspire others through your actions. Inspirational leadership comes from action. I love this example. He's doing such a great job. Galen Weston Jr. is just killing it. Like, he is a really powerful leader. His team, his senior financial people are on the front lines. They're stocking grocery shelves. They're helping people sort of check out. They're not staying at home. He is updating people every few days through the PC Optimum app and online. He's telling people what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what they're going to be doing and by when. And he, more than anyone that I've seen recently, is putting his employees first. He's even signing off his updates with "be kind" or "stay safe," which how many CEOs do you know do that? And certainly it is a sign of the times, but really a sign of his strong leadership. So I would say to everyone on this call, consider how you can get into the trenches with your team. If they're having to leave their home to do work or do deliveries or do anything like that, make sure that you're with them to make sure that you're out there, putting yourself almost ahead of them, because that's what inspirational leaders do.
And what recommendation do you have to balance that? That I know many leaders are definitely going in that vein, but almost to the point where it could be compromising, their mental health, or that they're feeling so overextended. How do you find a balance between really putting yourselves in the same kind of community as your employees and helping, without veering too far that you're sacrificing potentially your mental health?
I think it's just it's important to really understand what your team needs. There are many teams that are so appreciative of, and again, we work with manufacturing companies that are still operational, and their leaders show up twice a week to thank them with treats for them, and really just to say thank you. Like, truly, they're not there to do any production, but they're there to say, you're doing a great job and we appreciate what you're doing. I think that as a leader, there's many things that we need to do to be visible so that our team can see us. And I think the perception of I'll just give that same example, a workforce who are out and in the factory, and a senior leadership team who are at home and talking to them from their homes is not the best signal of leadership. And certainly it's important. And certainly at the start of this, we were thinking, well, the leadership team should be isolated should something happen. However, now you see Premier Doug Ford hauling sort of all kinds of things out of trucks. And if he can do that, so can you. So I think it's important for you to, and we'll talk about mental health in a little bit, to really understand what you are capable of, and then just deliver on that. Because I think that self-care, and we'll get into that, is important for everyone, and more important now than ever before.
Completely agree. Let's jump into number 6. We're at 6.
Here's another item of self-care, although it may not seem that way. And what I'd like everyone to do is minimize Zoom fatigue, because it's really important, not only for yourself, but for your employees. We are on back-to-back Zoom calls all day. And that's so different than what we're used to. And having to be on and sit up straight, and I can do this for an hour and it's no problem, but like from 1 hour to the next, to look focused and attentive, that is draining. It's exhausting. So here's what I recommend. I highly recommend you do. You tell your employees that they turn off their Zoom video or do conference calls. If they need to address everyone, if they're talking like I am right now, great. Tell them to turn on their video. But here's what you need to let them do. You need to let them sort of just come down from all of the engagement on Zoom. Let them look out the window. Like I'm looking out at a beautiful tree right now, and it's giving back to me as I do that. But to sit and be attentive on calls, just let them smile. Let them say hi to their kids as their kids are walking by. Let them not be on 100% of the time. And here's the payback that you'll get. They will be much more productive for the rest of the day. I certainly, when I joined Zoom calls, I unapologetically, I now realize, just get on and I don't open my camera, because I can listen and I can also multitask and do something else. And it allows me to be more productive, and allows me to shut down at a time where I can actually engage with my kids afterwards. So let your team do that. Give them permission and tell them that's what you expect of them, because they'll be listening. They don't need to be just looking at you. They could be stretching. They could be, because we're sitting all day, they could be looking out the window and just breathing. So I'd highly recommend that.
That's a good one. And we're seeing so much literature and so many pieces, what is the effect of this Zoom fatigue, and what is it happening on our workforce, that there is this level. And I even found at the beginning, my jaw was hurting so much because I was speaking in this way that felt kind of unnatural and really, trying to extend my voice. So there are, effects of this that we need to acknowledge, and balancing, having this nice connection of face-to-face. But I think exactly, if there are spaces to be multitasking, and really just trusting that your employees and that your colleagues are giving it the attention that it needs, and that they can, do other things at the same time.
This crisis is the ultimate exercise in trust. It's the ultimate exercise in trust. And I think it's wonderful. I really think it's wonderful. We saw so many companies at the start of this pandemic not wanting to send people home because they didn't trust that they would be productive, or trust that they work. And I bet that people, like, now is not a very productive time because kids are around and we're helping with homework and all of that. But once kids are back, and if companies end up having a hybrid model, believe me, employees are more productive at home than they are at the office when they're distracted by different conversations and people just leaning over to say, hey, what do you think about this? In fact, many of my clients will, tell me, I'm going to work from home today so I can bang through this. So I think that there'll be some really great rewards from so many people working from home.
I think so too. Yeah, that trust piece across the board is something that we're seeing really significant uptake on. And I think, this whole remote working, we don't have a choice. You have to trust that your employees are going to get things done. So it's almost forced in this circumstance, but it's opening up this bigger trust conversation and building it during a time where we don't really have another option. Number 7.
Number 7, you're following the numbers really well. Thank you, Kayla. Listen and get personal with your employees. So here's what I'd like to say, and this is something that I learned just a few years ago, and I learned it from a business coach. Don't assume that you know what's on someone's mind. Don't assume you know how someone's feeling. Ask them. So many people just assume, and I'm sure many of you have experienced that in conversations. Now is a time, after so many weeks of communicating to employees, for you to just ask them how they're feeling. Now is a time for you to listen and really understand who they are as people and where they're at. I've been advising my clients over the last few weeks to have virtual coffees and to really sort of engage with small groups of people and ask them how they're doing. Ask them how you can actually help them. Do they have the right chair at home? I told my team, go into the office, grab yourself a chair and just leave. Like they're really good chairs. It'll help you sort of focus. So ask your team what they need. And here's what some of my clients have found in talking to their employees. They have people who are afraid of going back to work, even in a few months, and it's causing them tremendous anxiety and stress. There's others who don't want their kids to go back to school and want to homeschool them. And believe me, I am not in that camp. I am going to be very happy when my kids go back to school. But all of these learnings are so essential to understanding what your workplace is going to look like after this is done, what your new normal is going to look like. Maybe you won't even have an office to go to. Think of like all of the rent that you can save by doing that if your team is operating in a productive way once we kind of settle back into a new normal. And also, you know, when we go back into the transition into going back to work, we're going to have to really respect how each individual feels about their personal situation, their anxieties, and their fears. So I would say that leaders who are impatient, leaders who are not normally compassionate, will really have to build that muscle. That is a muscle that we will all need to build and to acknowledge so that our people can feel safe and be productive members of our team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we need to do this at a first instance. From many leaders that I've been speaking to, it's almost this hesitation about opening the door and listening because things need to get done. That, you know, we're in crisis mode. We need to be operating at full tilt and sort of push away some of those emotional elements just to get the job done. But, you know, the ripple effect of that is going to be catastrophic. That, you know, there will come a moment where all of that backfires. So I think embedding this and it's in an attitude and it's in your approach, and it can be more subtle than, you know, carving out hours and hours to check in on your teams and have these big conversations. It can just be a simple, you know, how are you feeling today? If you could describe it in one word, how are you doing? Like just carving that out and making it a part of your daily routine is so important.
That's funny. That's a YPO check-in. When during forum meetings, everyone would check in with one word in terms of how they're feeling. That's a really great approach. And I think that we're in a really different era. Like this is an era where feelings are important. Anxieties where, you know, they might have been hidden before, or they might have been related to your personal life. They're all in your company. They're in your culture. Like they're right here. And so you need to acknowledge them. You really need to acknowledge them. For people to be able to do the work they need to do, that needs to be acknowledged.
Completely agree. Number 8.
Number 8, be flexible with your employees and tell them to prioritize their own needs. Again, related to what I just said, this is not something that a leader, and certainly at a startup where you're moving fast and you're really trying to grow and you're trying to build, not normally something that you would engage your team with. But this is really a time to encourage your team to prioritize their family needs and self-care. And here's what this is going to mean. They're going to work much longer hours because they need to meet their sort of professional obligations. I've got an 11-year-old boy who's in grade 6 and a 3-year-old girl who's in grade, not 3-year-old, a 9-year-old now in grade 3, and they have homework that needs to be done. There are no lessons that are being taught, so there's lots to explain to them. I have to submit homework for them. So there's a lot that goes on in my day, and it's a much longer day, believe me, than it normally is. So, you know, I think you just need to acknowledge that before you get on a call with someone, they might have been helping their child with homework over there, and they might be just like shooing them out of their office so they could actually have a call. And, you know, they also might be caring for an aging parent. So there's so much that's going on that I think leaders today should really tell their people that they don't expect them to be at their desk from 9 to 5. They realize that they're working longer hours than before, and the time I might need to deliver something might be at night because I have to have lunch with my kids or do something that is really part of my life that's super important. So I think it's also important, and again, this is so not traditional, and it's certainly not something that you'll hear, you know, leaders at big companies talk about, but if you're looking for sort of loyalty from your team, tell them to go out for a walk, tell them to sort of do yoga, tell them to do whatever they need to do to take care of themselves during the day so they can de-stress and they can be way more productive for you right now. and model that for them. I go out for a walk with my kids every day. My team knows that. And some days it's shifted by a little bit, some days it's not, but it's important to model that so people can really practice self-care. And, you know, wellness programs have been around for so long. Now it's important for us all to live it.
I love that. And the importance of actually telling your staff or your colleagues that this is okay. That, you know, when we first started through this, for me, you know, I just assumed, I was like, well, of course, go for a walk. Of course, you know, be as flexible as you want. And that was a lesson for me that, you know, there's so many things up in the air, and understanding what the new terms of engagement are and how we're engaging with each other. So being very clear in how you articulate that, like you have permission to really you know, take up whatever space you need to, and put yourself first. That's been definitely a lesson for me, that it's obvious in my mind, of course, you know, take this time, but articulating it being really key.
And you know what, I have, I've exercised more in the last few weeks than I ever have in my life, you know, going for walks and just really focusing on me, because I no longer have a 2-hour commute, 1 hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. So take advantage of that. Like really, and this is a total side topic, and maybe you've heard this, but like be super intentional about this time, because it will only last so long. And it seems like it will last an eternity, believe me. But be intentional about how you want to engage with your family, intentional about how you want to show up at work, intentional about your day, what you need to take care of yourself. Be intentional about that and just take care of yourself.
Fantastic. Love that. Let's hop into number 9.
Encourage your people to stay connected and have fun. So obviously with everyone, so many people at home, staying connected is now more important than ever. And you know what, companies, I'm really impressed, have been doing a really, really great job of this. It's also important to help your team see the lighter side of things. So if you can bring humor into meetings, if you can share certain videos and jokes, I mean, now is the time to do that, because it's just important to sort of bring people's, I'm noticing that a lot of people, we've been in this for I don't know how many weeks now, and it's really tough on a lot of people. So the more you can put a smile on their faces, the better. And you know, maybe it's time to sponsor some sort of challenge. I know a company that's doing and this is perfect for them, a beer brewing contest, and sort of like the results will be judged when they're back in the office. You know, maybe you can do a photo contest, maybe it's a battle of the bands, maybe it's a talent show, whatever really might engage your team. Even if it's a small team, bring them together and get to know them well. And you know, checking in with the team for like 15 minutes at the end of the day with like nothing on the agenda and something fun on your Zoom screen, I think will go a long way. And maybe it's not every day, maybe it's every few days, but just to connect, because I know how fast startups move. Just to connect, just to breathe, just to say, how's it going? And certainly in a group setting, people may not be as frank and open in terms of how they're going. So one thing that sort of I was pulling together this presentation that I'm going to propose to my team is I'm going to do some walks with them, just one-on-one walks where they can get outside and walk and I can get outside and walk and just see how they're doing and just really, really connect. And you know what, I think that as a result of everything that people are doing, virtual happy hours and all of this, I think people will actually be more connected after this and be way more productive at working together because they will know each other personally.
Yeah, and there's all these opportunities for gamification that, you know, on the Startup Canada team, we had this great sort of mini event I think it was last week, where we had questions and fun facts and very specific things about all of our team members, and sort of presented a bit of a guessing game using a tech platform, but just getting to know each other, and we have a very new team as well. So this is you know, checking multiple boxes, that it's getting to know people, it's adding that levity and that fun, and really helping people unwind a little bit and have fun, you know, virtually, as opposed to, you know, doing it in the office. So multiple benefits, and I love that one-on-one walk idea. That also checks a number of boxes.
and here's the other thing about the one-on-one walk is that you get people out of their environment where they might be a bit guarded at home, depending on how many people or who's around. And you get people talking, and you might find ways that you can actually help them, right? Things that, you know, people have their game faces on when they come to meetings, and they feel very much that it's still work. But there's a whole person underneath, and so many people are suffering right now. And the more you can learn about people, the more you can help. So I think that one-on-one connection is important on so many different levels.
Love that. Fantastic. Let's go to number 10.
Number 10, teach your team how to stay healthy. This might be my favorite category, to be honest, even though I run a communications firm. I love this, and it's actually become a bit of a, not side hustle, but passion for me in the last few years. So again, tons of talk about wellness in the workplace, and this crisis has just taken everything to like a whole new level. And a role that might be new to you and frankly untraditional is a health and wellness coach for your team. And leaders now have a passport to provide health advice, certainly from trusted sources, and wellness advice. And that might be exactly what your team needs right now. So there are so many tips that you can share for healthy cooking. And the reason that that would be important for your team is to ensure that they stay healthy and their immune systems are boosted. It also communicates that you really care about their health. You can also highlight how they can reduce frankly, reducing sugar intake can also boost your immune system, how exercise and sleep can also help you stay healthy. So I just wanted to share a few of the trusted sources that I go to all the time and that I've shared with my team. And Kayla, I can send these to you afterwards. And I'm going to start with my doctor crush. Dr. Mark Hyman. I'm being very transparent right now. He is truly, I actually met him last year. I think I might be blushing. I listen to his podcast all the time, and I think he's my friend many times. But I'll tell you why I love him. He is a functional medicine doctor, and many of you might be saying, what is functional medicine? Exactly. He's on the cutting edge of medicine. And without getting into it, what functional medicine does, it goes to the source of any medical condition or issue that you have, versus Western medicine, which will give you a pill for this and a pill for that and a pill for this and tell you they can't treat that. Functional medicine is just beautiful. In any case, he has, if you search for Dr. Mark Hyman, Hyman, anything on him plus any health condition will lead to amazing results. He wrote a really great article on how to protect yourself from COVID-19, and he has a webinar on the functional medicine approach to COVID-19, and it's outstanding. It's a radically different approach than what you've heard out there, and it's all about embracing food as medicine, and it's beautiful. It's really, really great. There's also another article by Dr. Michael Breus, B-R-E-U-S. He is a sleep expert, and it's called How You Can Use Sleep to Fight Back Against the Coronavirus. I know many people are having a really tough time sleeping right now. So again, sleep is really critical to boosting your immune system. That's another great article to share with your team. Another doctor crush that I have, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee in the UK. He has a great podcast, and he brings so much into his podcast. Not only, he's a functional medicine doctor as well, but he brings things like connecting with people and how that's good for your health, and he used studies to prove it. So he did an interview with this psychiatrist, Dr. Judson Brewer, on how to manage anxiety in the face of a global pandemic. And again, you may not be seeing it directly as people get on Zoom calls or phone calls with you, but there is so much anxiety that's just underneath the surface. So something like that could really help someone. Amazing wellness recipes by Chris Carr. She's also from the UK. She is a cancer thriver and wellness activist. She's wonderful. Yoga with Adriene, for those of you who are yoga enthusiasts, she has become a YouTube favorite during this pandemic, with great YouTube classes you can take. And then the last person that I would share with you is someone that I've studied with. Her name is Tara Brach. She has written books on radical acceptance and radical compassion, and she is also a meditation teacher and leverages Buddhist philosophies. And if you're in need of anything that helps you sort of be more compassionate towards yourself, or really just understand what we're going through, just search up Tara Brach, and you'll be delighted.
Fantastic. Well, we've definitely got some homework to go here. This is perfect. When I think, so many people are going into the business podcast route, or focusing, how to maintain productivity during COVID-19, yeah, or pivoting your business and putting all of that pressure on being innovative, which is very important. But this health dynamic and really, going to your foundation and your core, and making sure that you're positioning yourself in sleep, in diet, in exercise, and honoring that is so unbelievably important right now, and giving yourself permission to focus on that is a great lesson there.
And believe me, if you want your team to be productive, they need to be healthy. And right
Exactly.
now, I wouldn't categorize very many people as healthy because of all the stress that we now have in our life. So it may seem that this sort of best practice is tangential, but I would say that it's absolutely foundational for your team's productivity. And what you may want to do is just listen to some of those resources and see which ones are right for you and right for your team, and then share them. And what we do with our team, we have a whole productivity module that we're going to launch next week based on HBR, Harvard Business Review, sort of articles on productivity. And we're focused on that. And we talk about health, and we talk about sleeping, we talk about all of this. And because they know that it's important to me that they're healthy.
I love that. Fantastic. So I think we're down to our 11th tip. I think we're at the end of the line.
We
Let's hear it.
are, and this is a short one. So speaking of Tara Brach, practice self-acceptance and compassion and just be yourself. So as we all know by now there's no COVID-19 communications handbook, and you won't always know what you're doing. Some of the communications that you try will be great and some won't, and that's okay. It's uncharted territory for all of us. So don't beat yourself up. If something doesn't work, just try something different. And be sure to follow your own healthy eating and exercise tips that you're sharing with your team. And so to conclude, here's my main message. How you treat your people, from your communications to showing that you care, to sharing sort of tips on how they can preserve their well-being and their physical fitness. All of that during this crisis will establish your reputation, not only in the months, but in the years to come. And overly massaged messaging delivered by leaders who stand above from and apart from their team, that's no longer okay. So what we need is leaders who stand side by side with their people and who care enough to help their people. Leaders who share tough news with compassion and empathy, and really who make transparency a top priority. So really what I'm trying to say is we need real leaders to be real people who are unafraid of showing their humanity and are really just comfortable with being themselves. And that's frankly all we can ask of leaders today.
That is such a fantastic message to end things on. Fantastic, Andrea. Thank you so much. I'm like feeling all the feels, I think, right now with all these messages. Absolute gold. So we'll open it up to a couple of questions. So we're wrapping up momentarily. We do have a question asking about, shifting from work from home and, with teams and being flexible with your teams. Have there been any issues with that flexibility being weakness or being perceived as weakness, or if there's total flexibility, there's no structure, which can be destabilizing? How do you balance being very flexible, but also providing kind of the structure and structured environment when our environments are kind of all over the place?
I think that's a great question. And I think that it's bringing humanity back to leadership communications. I think that as we get the green light to go back to work, again, tons of people will not be comfortable doing that. So I think that my personal opinion is that we should give our teams the choice. Many of them might be very grateful to leave their house and go to work and have an environment to work in. You're going to have to shift that environment. You're going to have to redesign that environment so that people are far away from each other. You're going to have to figure out how to use your boardrooms. You're going to have to figure out how to use your kitchens. Like, there's so many issues, frankly, going back. And I kind of like not roll my eyes, but even as I talk about that, I'm thinking about my office, and we'll have to wait and see. But I think that the most humane thing you can do, especially if your team, well, certainly whether your team is performing well or not, give them the choice until everyone starts to go back. I mean, we work in an office tower downtown. We don't know how we're going to have to share the elevator space to get up and down. So there's just so many unknowns right now that if things are working well at home, keep your people at home while you figure this out. You may even figure out that you don't want an office. You may figure out that you want to scale down office, or frankly, Kayla, you and I were talking about this earlier. You just go in to meet with people eventually once there's a vaccine and once people can be sort of in the same room together. But I would say just go easy on your team, think about their concerns, and I'd recommend you be flexible. about that.
Yeah, that flexibility, that's a fantastic note to end on, I think. And as we evolve over the next coming days and months, flexibility, we all have to be flexible in every meaning of that word, and pivot being, something I think we're all going to get our tattooed on our arms or something moving forward. But that flexibility with COVID, I think so many people are thinking about it, COVID started and COVID's going to end. But we don't have that security that there's going to be a finite endpoint. Our whole worlds are going to continue to evolve, and the way we work will shift, the way we interact with people. So having that perspective and just getting comfortable with that flexibility now is something, I would strongly recommend. And I think based on this conversation is where we're going with your recommendations too.
Great, completely agree.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Andrea, for all of these tips. I love the packaging, and I think there are some incredible takeaways. And I know I've been viciously writing through on my post-its of action items on my end. So really, really incredible insights. And I just really appreciate your human approach to this, that, recognizing that we're all struggling in very different ways, and that's okay. But now is the time for leaders to be more human and to, be vulnerable, but that will also increase productivity, that at the end of the day, having that approach will support your teams in doing the best work that they can during these circumstances. So that's really incredible. So thank you for everyone who's joined us for the Women Entrepreneur webinar series today, and to those that are going to participate over the months to come. We hope that you receive some really valuable insights, and that you can manage with grace and with strategy and navigate your business comms moving forward, both internally and externally. Our next webinar is going to be on business sustainability during times of crisis with Connie Stacy, who is the president of Growing Greener Innovations. And that's going to be next Thursday, May 7th. So you can register on Startup Canada's website. Thank you again to everybody for participating today. And we wish you all the best as you navigate the coming days and weeks. Thanks again, Andrea, for all of your support.
Thanks, everyone. My pleasure.
Thank you.